What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking about the best cheap FPL defenders, and these are the ones costing 4.5 million or less. Now, there's quite a few to go through. I'm going to go the ones that I would consider the main players being talked about, the ones that we should be looking at. We've got some promoted defenders as well, and also some ones to watch. So these are players that not necessarily nailed, but if we keep an eye on pre-season, they could be great options for 4.5 million. So if it's helpful, please do give it a like. It helps out the channel. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here, and let's just quickly talk about Fantasy Football Scout. So if you haven't already checked out Fantasy Football Scout, I have partnered with them for pre-season, which I'm really happy about because I've been playing for like 10 or 11 years now at FPL, and I've been using this site since day one, so it's great to be able to partner with them. There's loads of extra members articles and stuff like that. If you want to sign up, there's a link in the description below. At the time of recording, there's 20% off as well, and you can pay monthly or you can just pay annually as well. One of the things I use it for is the members area, which is what I've got it up on screen. Now, we're looking at cheap defenders today. There's loads of different tools you could use specifically for that, or building your team for game week 1. What I tend to use though for this is the comparison tool. So for example, let's say you wanted to look at Lamptey, who's a very popular Brighton defender who we'll discuss in a minute, and you wanted to compare him to Fofana. You could do that for last season, so 2020-21 season, and just click compare. And then if I make this a bit smaller, there's loads of stats, how attacking they are, how many shots they have, and all that good stuff as well. I'm not going to go through every single stat, but you can use that, and you can also compare teams and things like that. The other thing, which is really useful for cheap defenders, is the season ticker. Now, I've shown you this before in other videos. You can sort it by best defense, best attack. You can have 5 game weeks, you can have less, you can have more. But if I put it for 10 game weeks, for example, and let's say I really want to buy a Brighton defender, whether it's Lamptey, White, etc., whoever's still at Brighton by game week 1, but I want to go for another cheap defender and I want to see who rotates, and I just highlight the team, so Brighton, and click sort by rotation, and that would give you the best fixtures that rotate. So Leeds is next down, so they would rotate really well. So for example, you'd play your Brighton defender for the first 2, Burnley and Watford, then you'd switch to your Leeds defender for Burnley, then back to your Brighton defender for Brentford, back to your Leeds defender for Newcastle, etc., etc. And if there's other teams that you want to target, you can just click on them and then sort by rotation instead. So it's a really useful tool. Lots of useful tools on it, but that's a particular one for cheap defenders. So if you want to check it out, link in the description below. Sign up to become a member now, 20% off. Like I said, you can just pay monthly or full season. It's a great site, loads of great tools. So we'll start with Lamptey first, just because I've already talked about him quite a bit. One thing I will say before we get started, well, there's 2 things really. One, I know for some teams they have multiple defenders at the same price point. So this is all 4.5 or below. But realistically, as it stands right now, there aren't any cheap 4 million defenders that are going to likely play. So these are all 4.5 million defenders. And when there is a team like Brighton that have others, I'll talk about them as well and what the pros and cons might be. And also, obviously, yes, we're looking for a run of great fixtures. But if you've got a defence that has like, I don't know, Luka Dean, Shaw, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Robertson, and players like that who you're going to play every single week, then your 4.5 million defenders don't necessarily need a whole green streak of fixtures, right? Yes, okay, Lamptey, for example, or Brighton are playing Everton and Leicester, which aren't ideal. But if you've got a bunch of other defenders that can play in those places, then you just need to figure out when you might need your 4.5 million defender to play, or are they really attacking that if they are off the bench, there's a chance of an attacking return. So that's worth considering when you think about which players to buy. Now, Brighton I really like for one reason and one reason only, is that stat at the bottom. So I've put on for all these players the expected goals conceded as a team, right, for last year. Now, I haven't put the specific number. I've just put where they ranked from best to worst. So Brighton were the 3rd best. Now, a lot of people will say they still conceded a lot. Their defence isn't as good as like Man United, etc., Liverpool, Chelsea, and all those teams, which I get. And I would be a little bit cautious of them suddenly being brilliant last year, and that will that transfer to a lot more clean sheets this year. I probably would put them a bit lower down, but their defence does tend to be quite good. Sanchez is pretty decent in goal. They've got a system that they all know how to play. Now, Lamptey, if he's fit, is the one that I think I would go for. Those attacking stats, 0.06 XG per 90 plus 0.11 expected assists. That's 0.17 overall. That's quite high for an attacking defender compared to some of the other options that we will see on this list. And last year, he did get 1 goal, 3 assists. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but if I have a quick look at his minutes, he only played 887 minutes last year. Now, that can be, conceived in 2 ways, right? One, he gets injured a lot. And he had a lot of hamstring injuries where he had to come off early, and eventually he just was out for the season. But 2, the attacking threat is there. if he can get plenty of minutes, then he can get you plenty of attacking returns as well as hopefully some clean sheets as well. Now, if you wanted a bit more of a nailed-on defender, maybe a little bit less attacking, but nailed on, going to play 90 minutes most games, and hopefully we'll get some clean sheets, because they have got some good fixtures to start. Burnley, Watford, Brentford and Palace, 4 out of the first 6 are looking really good. And you've got Ben White, but obviously he may be sold, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Webster as well. And if Lamptey isn't fit, then Veltman might play on that right side as well, and he's 4.5 million. So I definitely think Brighton are a defence worth looking at. Obviously, a lot of people are going for Sanchez, the goalkeeper, who's also 4.5. So there probably is a conversation to be had about whether or not you should double up. I think as long as you don't have to play your defender every single week, like I wouldn't want to play Sanchez in goal and Lamptey or White or whoever it is against Leicester, for example. But if you can rotate your defender a little bit, then it could be a really good pick, whether you've got Sanchez or not. So I really like the look of Brighton. Are they the 3rd best defence in the league? I mean, if I was guessing who's going to concede the least amount of goals, I'm not sure I'd put Brighton 3rd, but they are probably better than we think they are. And if they can start, you know, like I said, transferring some of those underlying numbers to actual clean sheets, then they could be a bargain with those fixtures. So Lamptey's the one for me, but if he's not fit to start the season, he's going to be out for a few games, then definitely Veltman. Otherwise, you go a bit safer with someone like White. So Luke Ayling is proven to be quite popular, 9.3% owned at the moment, and there seems to be, like when I look on Twitter and places like that, quite a lot of love for the Leeds defence. Now, I think some of the results from the back end of last season are playing into people's minds. So they drew 0-0 with Man United. They did concede to Man City, but they only lost 2-1. Plus, they were down to 10 men for a lot of that game as well. So it was a really good result. And they didn't have, at the start of last season, a lot of fit centre-backs at the same time. There was a lot of chopping and changing in that defence. What I would say is you need to be wary, right? You don't want to just put down to a very small sample size and say, wow, the last 10 games they were really good, therefore they've improved, because things can change quickly. And the reason I would be wary is if you look at the expected goals conceded for Leeds last year, they were 18th, the 18th worst team in the whole league. One kind of caveat to my own point, though, is they did tend to concede quite a lot to the big teams early on. So I think they conceded 6 to Man United. They conceded 4 to Liverpool on the opening day of the season. And one thing we found with Leeds is when they played the, you know, so-called weaker teams or teams that weren't necessarily going to score as many, like your Burnleys, maybe even your Southampton, sometimes Newcastle, teams like that, they were able to control the game so much better because we know the amount of running they do, the pressing to win the ball back, and those kind of teams really struggle with that. So again, it's a 4.5 million defender. They're not being put in to be played every single week. So Man United, Liverpool are obviously tough games. West Ham will be tough as well. But if you only need him for like Burnley, Newcastle, then he is a very attacking defender. It's quite funny because last year at the start of the season, there was lots of Ayling versus Dallas threads on Twitter comparing the two players. And Ayling actually came out of the season with no goals, no assists in the Premier League. But if you look at his expected goals and expected assists per 90, together it combines to about 0.10, which doesn't sound very high, but over the course of the season, that's about 4 returns. So he definitely underperformed a little bit in that regard. I remember him scoring a goal, got his hairband off, but unfortunately it was VAR'd for offside. So if you're going to go for a Leeds defender, which I don't think there's a must to do that at the start of the season because they've only got a few good fixtures, and someone like Lamptey, White, etc. for Brighton might be a better option, potentially Fofana, who we'll talk about soon. But in those fixtures, they should do pretty well. So I like them. I think if you're looking at a Leeds defender, it has to be Ayling. I asked quite a few Leeds fans who would start as the centre-back partnership, and they basically said it was Llorente probably plus one other. Whether that's Cooper or Struijk, we'll have to wait and see. There might be some rotation there. But they don't offer enough threat to displace Ayling as being the best FPL option. There's obviously Firpo, I need to check exactly how to pronounce that, but he's coming at 5 million, so he'll probably play left back. Whether or not he starts the season there, we'll have to wait and see, but once he's up to speed with the way Leeds play, he'll almost certainly be the left back. Now, he might be worth the extra 0.5 million because he is very attacking, but I'm not sure I want to go 5 million for a team that were the 18th worst team for expected goals conceded too soon. Maybe he's one to look at later on, but if you want to go for a Leeds defender from the off, I think Ayling is definitely the one, as long as you don't need to play him in those Man United, Liverpool, West Ham fixtures, etc. Fofana, very popular. Now, I did put him in my best value players video already, so I won't go into great detail about him again, but he's already 26.6% owned. To be fair, look, I looked at the Leicester defenders. I was very very surprised that he was well, I think I would consider him underpriced. I don't see why you'd pay an extra 0.5 million for Soyuncu. Like Fofana, pretty much when he was fit last year, played 90 minutes, apart from towards the end of the season, but he was fasting for Ramadan a lot. So when they had the chance to take him off, he came off. He doesn't have a huge amount of attacking threat. And again, I've looked at on a team-by-team basis for expected goals conceded, and Leicester came out 10th. So they were only middle of the road anyway. So they're a good-ish defence. They're not an awful defence, but they're also not right up there with the best as well. But they have got some really good fixtures to start. So Wolves, Norwich and Burnley in particular are decent fixtures for clean sheets. Maybe the off chance or the odd chance to get one against Brighton, West Ham as well. I wouldn't put that past them. So I do like him. I think in terms of perhaps clean sheets versus Brighton, or they have very good fixtures, but definitely versus Leeds, I'd probably put Leicester a little bit higher. But when it comes to those attacking returns, which is kind of what you want from a defender if you can, Fofana's not really up there. He only got 1 assist last year. His goal threat isn't that high either. I would definitely think from an attacking point of view, Ayling or Lamptey, etc. are better. But in a team that's probably going to push for top 6, top 4 again, with some fairly good opening fixtures, 4.5 million when everyone else is kind of 5 or above in that team, he looks decent. So Connor Coady and Wolves in particular are quite an intriguing one, because obviously they've got a new manager. We're not quite sure now how they will set out. There'll probably be a back 4. Who will the personnel be for that back 4? We're going to have to wait and see. And they have got some other 4.5 million defenders as well. So I'm intrigued for a few reasons. One, in the past we've seen Wolves' defence be very good. And also they're a good price at 4.5 million. But last year they did try and transition from a back 5 to a back 4, which didn't work out that well. They weren't that defensively solid. But when you look at the numbers again, expected goals conceded as a team, they were the 6th best team last year. So maybe the underlying stats are there. It didn't quite convert to clean sheets, but that might revert this season. It's whether or not you're willing to take a gamble on that. Now, the first 3 fixtures are not ideal. Leicester, Spurs, Man United. You probably wouldn't want to play Coady or whoever you pick from Wolves in any of those fixtures, to be honest. But again, if you wanted to put a 4.5 million defender in your team that's good for the long haul, because when I put 4.5 million defenders in, you don't want to use a lot of transfers on them. You want to use them on attacking players. You want to use them to get the best captain in. You maybe want to use them to change a premium defender around now and then. 4.5 million defenders, unless they get injured, are not where you want to spend your transfers. So first 3 fixtures aren't good. But from game week 4 to all the way to pretty much game week 14, like if I bring the rest of the fixtures up, they look decent. So this is some of the teams they play, right? Watford, Brentford, Southampton, Newcastle, Villa, Leeds. Okay, that's not that easy. But then Everton, Palace, West Ham, Norwich, Burnley, all the way down to game week 14. That's a long haul to have a defender in that you don't really need to change that often. Now, the reason I picked Coady is because he's absolutely nailed, or at least has been in the past. Obviously, he's captain as well, as you can see from the image. Again, exactly which personnel the new manager picks, we'll have to wait and see. From what I've read, he's probably going to instill a bit more of an attacking kind of strategy, tactics, etc. for Wolves. Maybe not going to be quite as defensive. Probably also going to play a back 4, which we saw Wolves struggle with at times last year. So maybe it's worth seeing what happens there. But if you're on an early wild card, for example, or you know that you're going to want someone for the long term, then Wolves could be the ones. Now, Coady at 4.5 looks good. Other options are Johnny. He's very attacking, or he has been in the past, but he is going to be injured for a while, so not one to look at for now. And then it's just a case of who is going to play left back, I think, in the back 4, because they've just signed out Nuri for a longer time. Marçal is obviously in there as well. Bolly, Sice are 5 million, decent centre-backs. I think Coady for 4.5 could be better, though. The only thing with Sice is you get someone who's a lot more attacking, but if he's only going to go for a back 4, is it going to be Sice and Coady? To me, it seems more likely it'll be Bolly and Coady, and Sice won't play. And then right back, you got Semedo, but he's 5 million as well. So I would keep an eye on pre-season and see exactly how Wolves set up. I would definitely be cautious, because when they played a back 4, I don't think they were as solid as they have been under Nuno in the past as a back 5. And I do like Coady because he's nailed on, but keep an eye on Nuri as well, because from game week 4 to 14, they got some seriously good fixtures that you could easily rotate these defenders in. So I'm just going to quickly touch on Holgate, because to be honest, right now, I'm not 100% sure if he's going to be completely nailed on, but he did play a lot of minutes last year. Again, another team with a new manager, Benitez, who, to be fair, I think a lot of people are expecting them to tighten up a bit defensively. Again, expected goals conceded as a team last year, they were 14th. They were not good, and a lot of the time they were not necessarily a defensive target, but if you had an attacking player playing Everton, it didn't bother me too much. He did score 1 goal, only 1.1% ownership. Again, the opening fixtures are not fantastic, but they're not bad either, right? Norwich and Burnley in there, Brighton and Southampton as well is not too bad. I wouldn't necessarily back them against Leeds because Leeds are so attacking, but I think Everton are one to watch. Now, the reason I've picked out Holgate, obviously because he's 4.5 million, but if he does nail down a spot as a centre-back in that team, then he's 1 million cheaper than Luca Dean. Apparently, they're looking at Dumfries as well to bring in. We'll have to wait and see if that transfer happens. He'll almost certainly be 5.5 million as well after what we saw in the Euros. But Keane, Godfrey, and even Coleman are all 5 million, and Mina is as well. So FPL have obviously priced Godfrey, Keane, etc. as the nailed-on centre-backs. But there's nothing to say that when Benitez comes in that it might be Holgate instead. Again, one to look at a pre-season. With teams like this, managers like this, sometimes you just have to make a call. I'm someone that likes looking at the stats, right? So I'm looking at Wolves and thinking, well, 6 for expected goals and that's very good. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, back 4, they're not used to it. New manager, they might not be as good as those numbers say. With Everton, it's kind of the opposite. I'm thinking, right, 14, they weren't that good defensively. Luca Dean was talked about all season last year and just never got the clean sheets to back up some of those attacking returns. But then I'm thinking they've got Benitez in. He can definitely play more defensively, and we're pretty sure that's how he's going to set up. So I've got my eye on Holgate. If they play basically in pre-season and he looks nailed on, and obviously you've got those Burnley games, the Norwich game, we're just looking on a bit further, there's West Ham, Watford, Wolves. They're all teams where Everton could possibly get a clean sheet under Benitez. So don't completely rule him out, but obviously wait and see if he's completely nailed in pre-season. Okay, so I know we've gone through quite a few players, so I'm going to quickly touch on promoted defenders, and there's just a few more Premier League players that we'll go through quickly just to finish off. So I've basically picked probably the most attacking defender who's also nailed on from the 3 promoted sides. So Watford, Norwich and Brentford. And we'll take a quick look at the fixtures. So you've got Henry for Brentford, Aarons for Norwich and Kiko Fekonja for Watford as well. So you can see the stats there. 1 goal, 2 assists for Henry. 2 goals, 5 assists for Aarons, by the way. Really attacking. And Kiko Fekonja got 4 assists as well. Now, I had a look at the fixtures and the amount of goals conceded. So last year in the Championship, Brentford conceded 42. So they were, by goals conceded at least, they were the worst team. Norwich were 36 and Watford were 30. Now, I'll be completely honest, right? A player coming up would have to be extremely attacking for me to pick them over a Premier League proven player. And given the amount of Premier League players on this list who are playing for fairly decent defensive sides, I probably won't be picking any of these players from the start. Maybe when their fixtures turn, maybe when we see that actually they're handling the Premier League really well, then we can think about it. But right now, I'm not massively convinced because FPL have given us so many 4.5 million Premier League defenders. But just to quickly cover off the fixtures. So Brentford's opening 4 are okay. They've got Palace and Brighton in there, Villa and Arsenal as well. It's not great. And then you go longer term, you've got Wolves, Liverpool, West Ham, they're not good. Right, I wouldn't start. Norwich's are also awful. So there's no way I would start with Aarons. They've got Liverpool, Man City to open up the season, then Leicester, then Arsenal. Then it gets a little bit better. Watford, Everton, Burnley, Brighton, but then it's Chelsea as well. So in the opening 9, they play Liverpool, Man City, Leicester, Arsenal, Chelsea. Very difficult to rotate when you've got that many bad fixtures. And then Watford, and obviously you've got goalkeepers as well. For similar prices for all these teams. They got Villa, Brighton, Spurs, then Wolves, Norwich, Newcastle, Leeds. So out of the 3 teams, I would probably say that Watford's fixtures are slightly better than the other 2. But for all the reasons I mentioned before, I just don't think I'll start with them. Yes, they're attacking, but there's some very good Premier League players that are also attacking. But never say never. If Norwich look like they're doing well, which they didn't the first time round, not the first time, but the last time they were in the league, then Max Aarons is extremely attacking as long as he stays at the club. We'll obviously have to keep an eye on the transfers as well. But they're probably the 3 to be looking at if you're looking for a promoted defender. Okay, so I just wanted to cover off some others. I didn't want to make a video where I go through literally every single 4.5 million defender, but obviously we will keep an eye on pre-season. If things change massively, I'll talk about them in other videos. Chambers is an interesting one because his price is very cheap and he got 3 assists in not very many minutes and his attacking stats are extremely good. But like an idiot, I went out on Twitter and said, well, if Bellerin's going, is he not like pretty much nailed on? But then I forgot that Cedric's there, so we'll have to wait and see. Apparently they're in for another right back as well. And also Maitland-Niles has come back, who's listed as a midfielder in FPL but can play right back. So it does muddy the waters quite a bit. But if he was nailed on for the start, I know they've got a couple of difficult fixtures in the opening 3, but he was very attacking when he played that right back spot. I know in the past, obviously, he's been a centre back, and I'm sure that's where he'll go back to as well in the long run. But he was good at right back, so keep an eye. Loughton and Taylor are both still priced at 4.5 for Burnley. Not massively attacking, to be honest. And also, Burnley weren't that good defensively either last year. And the fixtures, Brighton, Liverpool, Leeds, Everton, Arsenal, Leicester, I'm pretty much ignoring them from game week 1. Masuaku is the one that I'm really interested in, because last year, before he got injured, West Ham played a back 5 with Cresswell left centre-back and Masuaku was the attacking left wing-back, and he was extremely good. And West Ham's fixtures are quite good. So Newcastle, Leicester, Palace, Southampton, Man United, Leeds. A few of those in the opening, especially when West Ham can hold their own in the tougher fixtures and Masuaku so attacking. We just need to see how David Moyes sets up in the last few kind of fixtures of pre-season. Because if it's a back 4, realistically, Cresswell's going to be the left back and Masuaku will just be on the bench. But if it's a back 5, he could be decent. So plenty of players to look at. Even Spurs have got like Rodon, Dyer and Sanchez are all 4.5. Let's see who Nuno fancies. Does he go to a back 5? Does he play a back 4? Who are the centre-backs? There's lots of stuff to look at on pre-season. Like I said, loads of Premier League defenders priced at 4.5 that are decent options. There we go. That is it for this one. Lots of defenders covered. Let me know who your favourite ones are. Right now, I'm definitely looking at a Brighton defender for 4.5 million. Like Lamptey is the one that I want. But if he's not fit, then maybe Veltman instead. And if Ben White moves to Arsenal, then I do back the Arsenal defence to improve a little bit this season. I think they actually did pretty well last year as well. So as much as I like that Chambers pick, I'm looking at Arsenal in particular. If I can get a 4.5 million defender, they would be good. And maybe Leeds. I just worry about their numbers from last year. They are a side that they can see quite a few times, but in those easier matches they do control things quite well. So that's where I'm looking right now. And look, you can't write off Coady or Fofana either, but a Brighton defender is probably where I'm at this stage. So let me know below. Give it a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. If you haven't checked out Fantasy Football Scout, make sure you do. There's a link in the description below. At the time recording this, there's 20% off as well for any members that sign up for pre-season. I'm not sure when that offer is going to end, but right now, like I said, at the time recording, it's on. Loads of great tools. I genuinely have been using it for like 10 or 11 years since I played FPL, so can definitely vouch for it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.